Orthopedic issues, upper and lower cross syndrome. What are orthopedic issues? Orthopedic issues entail any form of complications that relate to muscles, joints, or ligaments. Today we'll be focusing on two postural issues that have become very prevalent in society, demonstrating upper cross syndrome here, showing rounded shoulder blades, forward neck, poor posture, and lower cross syndrome here, extended pelvis, and outward torso. Today we'll be going through some warm-up exercises here for upper cross syndrome, going from camel stretch into a downward dog, beginning to warm up our back extensor muscles as well as our hips and shoulders. Important here to remember keeping your hands underneath your shoulders, leaning back till you feel a stretch in your back extensor muscles, and releasing back to neutral. In the next clip here, you will see me doing some wall angels. Very good idea to do wall angels before any form of upper body exercise. They mobilize your shoulders very well and release any form of tightness in the upper back. It is important to keep all your joints stacked against the wall here from head to toe, focusing on keeping a nice open chest and flat back as you perform every rep, moving both arms in unison. Up next, we have some scapular push-ups. With upper cross syndrome, it is very common for people to have a tight serratus anterior. So by doing some scapular push-ups, you're actually using your serratus, pulling your shoulder blades together and quickly pressing them apart. Now we're going to be moving on to some exercises to help with your rounded shoulder blades in your upper cross syndrome. Doing Supermans will help stretch out your back extensor muscles. Here I'm doing quite a few different variations, doing all limbs at the same time, opposite limbs, two of the same limbs, hands or legs. Moving on, we will be doing a seated cable row. I'll be showing a clip of what to do and what not to do during your seated cable row. So as you see here, I grab onto the handle, set my shoulder blades into place, roll my elbows into the side of my body, exhale as I pull in, inhale as I release, keeping a nice tight posture. As you see when we pan around here, I'm not letting my shoulders come too far forward, keeping my scapula nice and protracted. This will help increase your overall posture, causing you to stand a lot tighter through your shoulders and increase your neck extensors. Here are some examples of what not to do during a seated cable row. As you can see here, I am releasing my neck and shoulder blades far too much, causing potential injury in the lumbar spine, as well as extending way too far in this portion here, causing damage in the lumbar and cervical spine. Up next we have face pulls, another excellent exercise for your rhomboids and traps to pull those shoulder blades together, extend that neck forward, and increase overall postural mobility. For some stretches for upper cross syndrome, we have a wall/door frame stretch to open up your pectoralis major that will be constantly tight due to your rounded shoulder blades and neck being tilted forward. While performing this exercise, you want to try and keep your hand parallel with your shoulder as much as possible, and then rotate away from the wall to open up that pec. Hold for 2 sets of 15 seconds per side for the best benefits. So, upper and lower cross syndrome are typically caused due to too much seating or being on your phone too much and being hunched over. That's why it's important to perform mobility exercises as well as strengthening exercises like the cobra that you see here to open up the rectus abdominis that will be tight all the time due to your upper cross syndrome. The last stretch we're going to do here is a banded neck hold, holding the band on the opposite side of my body that I will be pulling my head, releasing the trap on my left side here, pulling with my right hand, and releasing those neck flexors that are constantly tight from looking down at a pen or paper, or typically a cell phone for most people nowadays. again holding for 2 sets of 15 seconds on each side. Moving on next, we will be doing some warm-up exercises for people with lower cross syndrome. Lower cross syndrome and upper cross syndrome do typically tend to come hand in hand with each other. If you are experiencing these symptoms in your upper body, you're most likely experiencing a rounded pelvis in your lower body due to lack of glute activation, core strength, and hamstring strength. So to warm up our glutes here, we are doing some simple glute bridges, hand width apart from butt to heel, pressing through the heel and extending the hips to the sky. Up next, we're just warming up the abdominals a bit with some simple crunches, releasing our head all the way down to the floor, supporting the neck, and then flexing the spine, squeezing that rectus abdominis, trying to get as much blood flow in there as possible to reduce injury. After this, we'll be doing a couple different variations of hamstring exercises to get those hams nice and warmed up for the upcoming workout. So I'm doing one seated med ball curl in here, really focusing on pulling my heels to my butt as close as I can, exhaling as I pull in. This would be considered a regression of the exercise. A more advanced version would be on the floor with the hips up in the air, pressing hands into the floor, keeping those glutes nice and active the whole time, and rolling heels into butt as best as you can. This could also be considered a full-on exercise, but for the purpose of today's workout, we'll be using it as a warm-up. So a good exercise to start out with would be a hamstring curl. If you strengthen your hamstrings, it'll cause your pelvis to turn back into a better position, lowering that lordosis that you're experiencing with lower cross syndrome. There are two different variations that you can do of a hamstring curl. You have a seated and a lying hamstring curl. For people with low back pain, I recommend doing a seated hamstring curl first until your low back pain subsides, and sitting upright instead of laying prone will be more comfortable for you. Up next, we have a weighted hip thrust, supporting my neck and top of my back on top of a flat bench, pressing through my heels, squeezing the glutes. By strengthening the glutes again, we will allow the pelvis to sit in a better position. And for the last exercise, we have a simple decline abdominal crunch, strengthening that core as much as we can to pull the pelvis forward and put it back into a neutral position. Strong core means a strong body. It is a great idea to train core every day since it is our most used muscle group. Up next, we have a couple stretches. So, since you're always in that lordotic posture, your hip flexors are going to be very tight. So here you can see me performing the pigeon pose as best as I can, trying to keep both hands flat on the ground, back upright, shoulders underneath the hips, holding for 2 sets of roughly 15 seconds per side. And up next here, we're going to have the camel stretch. Great idea since your pelvis is always tilted backwards and your shoulders will be pinned back against them when you're in a lower cross state. This will allow your erector muscles to be elongated and stretch throughout your whole body. And the last exercise we will be performing today is the regressed runner's lunge, focusing on pulling one foot in, opening up that right hip flexor here, and as well as strengthening my back extensor muscles as I lean forward, and then elongating my left hamstring. Performing the exercise on both sides to increase benefits on both sides of the body. That's all for your workouts to help improve upper and lower cross syndrome. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something good today.